is
Right.
4 o'clock.
Right, Aaron, go on to Facebook. Let's go. We're on.
Dun 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 dun, and we're on with the greatest Rabbi Yeshiva Rosh Rabbi Tanzer on Pirkei Avot. What an honor, what a privilege, what a blessing that we are privileged to be able to hear your words of wisdom. And let's go! Shkach, shkach.
Okay.
Thanks, Jude.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. Okay, thank you, children, grandchildren. Well, Hashem, we have Mazel Tov today. We have another great grandson born in Eretz Yisrael. So Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. We wish all of you and all of yours, please God, the same in due time, in the right time. Happiness, health, nachas, and good things. Only good things. Okay, Rabbi Side. We are still dealing with that second mission in Pirkei Avot of Shimon HaTzadik, all right? And let me see how we're going to deal with this. I'm going to read the mission again. It's a short mission. The mission begins by saying that Shimon HaTzadik was the last of the Anshe Knesset Agdala, Mishayared, the last one, and he was a Kohen Gadol, as we learned last time, for 40 years, a Kohen Gadol, a great Kohen Gadol, a great leader of his people, who was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years, when the average tenure was a year and a half in the Beit HaMikdash, and he said three things. Who are Yomei? This is what he used to say. The world stands on three pillars. He said, what are the three pillars? Allah Torah, Allah Avodah, Al Chasadim. The world stands on three pillars. What are the three pillars? Torah, which is Torah, Avodah, which is service to Hashem, and Gemilut Chasadim, which is loving kindness, Chesed, that one does for his fellow man. All right. In a word, in English, in English, as the Rishonim explained, I'm quoting to you a sentence: the purpose of the creation of the world was that so human beings would find favor with Hashem.
Rabbi Zaidi, we need you to put your video on. You haven't put your video on.
Hold on, Moshe's coming. Hold on.
Let's see. Yes, to start your video. Okay.
Hello?
Is it on? There he is.
Is it on? Okay.
Can you see him? Okay. I think you're there.
All right. So to repeat the words of Shimon HaTzadik, and I'm reading to you the words of Rabbi Yonah and the Bartanura. What is the purpose of the creation of the world was so that human beings would find favor with Hashem through the pursuit of these three things. In other words, these three things, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim, and mainly today we're going to talk about Torah. They are the reasons Hashem created the world. It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. Don't forget, in the Western world, in which all of us, most of us, all of us, are products of the Western world, whatever country it is in the Western world. Interesting that the concept of Torah is a pretty new concept in the depth, in the numbers, in the quantity and quality which is being observed today. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the center of Torah was Europe, and the real Torah center was Europe, and the values of the Torah were lived in Europe at the highest level. The highest level, Talmidei Chachomim, B'nai Torah, Europe was full, Baruch Hashem was full. It was the resource center for the world. In the rest of the world was another story. Among the handful of religious people, and they were just a handful, among those handful, and I'm talking about those who were Shomer Shabbos, Kashrut, etc., the idea of Torah was a beautiful word, a wonderful idea, but it was like the cherry on the top. cherry on the top, a Jew who knows some Torah, who enjoys Torah, that's very nice. It's beautiful. But that wasn't the core value. The core value was totally different. The core value was, as I read a moment ago, because of these three things, Hashem created the world. In other words, it's not a cherry on the top. It's the engine that drives the whole ship. The engine that drives Klal Yisrael. The engine, which is a spiritual engine, because we are a spiritual people, is the Torah, is Avot, is Yunus Hasadim. And would there be no Torah, there'd be no world. Very, very heavy words, very heavy words. In the United States, there was a man like Aaron Kotler and other giants, and the Rebbe, of course, among them, who brought this message. It was unheard of. It was a brand new message. It's a sort was a new message. It was a new message, but thank God, Hashem wanted Klal Yisrael to survive. Hashem wanted us to become B'nai Torah, and today we have, Baruch Hashem, hundreds of thousands of Jews learning Torah at the highest levels, in South Africa as well. In America goes without saying, in Israel goes without saying, and elsewhere, and all over, right? But in other words, it's not a cherry on top. It's basic. In the words of Haggai, we are only a nation because of the Torah. Now, in this Mishnah, and I used this as a source the other time, I'm calling you the Rav Tanzer, which is one of the key commentaries of the Mishnah, and the whole Shas. All right, he says three things. What are the three things in which the Torah stands on? One is called the Torah, Al HaTorah, and the Rav Tanzer says what's the source to that, and we quoted the source before. A pasuk in Yirmiyahu, the prophet Jeremiah says, "Im lo briti yomam v'laylo," if it were not for my covenant with the Jewish people, if it were not kept yomam v'laylo, day and night, which means 24 hours a day continuously, if Torah wasn't learned 24 hours a day, what does he say? He says, the laws of heaven and earth, who could Shemayim go to something? There'd be no world. There'd be no world. As I mentioned last time, it referred to giving it the Torah at Sinai. If we would have said no at Sinai, that could have been the end. All right. Now, interesting. There's a very famous sefer called Nefesh HaChaim, written by Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, who was the father of the first yeshiva. He was a student of the Vilna Gaon. He was a genius. He wrote a sefer called Nefesh HaChaim. I'm trying to find my page here right now, in which he wrote. So I'm sorry, take me a second. I have the page here. You have Chaim Volozhin in his sefer called Nefesh HaChaim, which is a brilliant sefer studied to this day in all the big yeshivas in the world. It is not Kabbalah, but very close to Kabbalah. The closest a Litva comes to learning Kabbalah was the Nefesh HaChaim. All right, in Nefesh HaChaim, which is totally centered on the concept. In other words, sometimes there's an approach to Musa that says, behave yourself. Because what are you in the eyes of God? An ant, a mosquito, a blade of grass. But behave yourself. Why do you have the arrogance to misbehave? But that wasn't a Nefesh HaChaim. That was not Chaim Volozhin's approach. This was a different approach. You're far too big to misbehave. You're far too decent to misbehave. Rabbi Twersky, the famous rabbi professor, Twersky said his father, when they were growing up, never gave them a hard time. He said to them, it doesn't suit you. That behavior doesn't suit you. You're more than that. And Nefesh HaChaim is based on the concept, the long reach of man. What the neshama of man is all about. Man's neshama reaches into the eternity of eternities, into the heavens of heavens. Man has a grasp which is long and powerful. he can change the world. One person can change the world. That's what Nefesh HaChaim is based on. And on this Mishnah over here, he says, just as God said at the creation, if it wouldn't be for Sinai, I wouldn't have made the world. At this very same time, the world depends on the study of Torah. B'chol rega v'rega, every moment. The world needs Torah. It is the oxygen of the world. Without it, it would come to an end. All right. I'm quoting now from looking with my finger in the book here. If even for a moment there wouldn't be any Torah in the world, that would be the death knell of the world. The world would go into dying spasms. And sometimes it may even be enrich one person. We don't know how many people. In Voloshin in Europe at the yeshiva, when everyone went home to search for komets on the night before Pesach, half the yeshiva stayed behind, just in case we're the only ones that turn the whole world for the next hour or two. In other words, that's how they understood and committed to the value of Torah, the oxygen, the essence of the Jewish world, right? And God forbid, without it, you'd be in trouble. Allah Avodah, again, I'm quoting from the Rabbi Tanzer. He says, when Hashem saw when Hashem brought the rainbow and Noah brought the sacrifice, God said, you know what? I'll never destroy the world again. So the sages said that was a sacrifice. Because Noah brought a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and therefore the world depends on sacrifices. Therefore, Al Avodah is Kavanot. And when Kavanot came to an end, Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, we said prayer, tefillah, Avodah Shivalev, davening, that became Avodah. Interesting that in one of the commentaries over here, it makes an interesting point, because the truth of the matter is that even when there was a Beit HaMikdash and there were Kavanot, there were times when you only davening would help. You needed davening even then. And what was a good example of that I have the example here in front of you somewhere, that when David HaMelech misbehaved with Bathsheba, whatever he did, he misbehaved, and he wanted to do tshuva, and he did tshuva, of course, and his tshuva was eventually accepted. So while he was doing tshuva, he said to Hashem, Hashem's fasativ talk. God, open my lips, my mouth, and hold on. Hashem's fasativ talk. Open my mouth and help me pray. And then the poster goes on to say, and I'm looking for my piece of paper here, and I have it right here. Well, David HaMelech said, Hashem, help me open my mouth to pray, because I would love to bring you a sacrifice, but you don't want that. I would love to bring you a sacrifice because I want to do tshuva, but I can't bring you a sacrifice. Listen to the words over here. Hashem, open my lips and help me pray. And the next posting says, you don't want a sacrifice. If you did, I would give it to you. Even my burnt offering, you don't want that. Why doesn't he want that? Say old Mefarshim, starting with Rashi, because David HaMelech, when he misbehaved, whatever he did, it wasn't by accident. It wasn't a shogeg. It was amazing. You can't bring your korban chatas on amazing. He says a sacrifice wouldn't be in place. Therefore, let me pray. So even when there were sacrifices, prayer still had a major role to play. So that's it. And chesed we will leave for another time. But what do we see over here? The Rebbe Shalom said. The Rebbe Shalom said to us, at the end of the day, the world was created for the oxygen of Torah, which keeps it going. In the words of my friend Beryl Wine over here, he says, even when it came to Sodom, in man's terrible hours, and when the world couldn't look any uglier than it did, what did Hashem say? I'll save the world if there are 10 people. 10 people. In other words, millions misbehaved. the amount of people who were negative was in the millions. Hashem said 10 are good enough, because it's all about the quality of good people. Good people carry the world. Good people make the world, and therefore one doesn't look at as the numbers. One looks at what one's role, one's challenge, one ought to be doing, and one acts accordingly. All right. So that was that. Now, if you recall, we can go back for a few minutes. Shimon HaTzadik was the high priest, Tzadik, 40 years, the leader of Klal Yisrael. Much bracha, many good things happened in his time, and they're all attributed to him. He was a Tzadik, he was a saint, he was a Godel. Mishnah gave him that title of Tzadik. Anyhow, and then he had the confrontation with Alexander the Great. Remember that? Alexander the Great, who came to vanquish the Jewish people, when he saw Shimon HaTzadik, got off, dismounted from his horse, whatever he was on, and he bowed down and he said, "This is the man who I see in my dreams every day. This is the man who prays for me." And Shimon HaTzadik and Alexander the Great stayed on for a while in Israel. I don't know how long he was there, but in that period, he studied with Shimon HaTzadik. And he found out there's a Jewish approach to the world, a Jewish approach. In other words, what did he find out? He found out, you see, he thought that because he was Alexander the Great, he was God. He thought he was a God. He found out there's no such thing. He's not a God. There's only one God. Furthermore, you can't even have a statue in the temple because you're not a God. There is a God, and it's not you. He found that there's a different order in the constitution of life he was unaware of. And he found out from Shimon HaTzadik that if you wanted that idolatry, which is what Alexander was all about taking worship, it divides the world, it breaks the world, it destroys the world. And only the belief in the unity of one God creates that unity of spirit, that permanence, that future, etc., etc. And then he also found out something else. He believed as a military man and as a man who conquered the world, that right is might. The man who has the strength and the power rules the world. Some are meant to be leaders, most are meant to be slaves, most are meant to be underdogs. And so human life had no value. People were put into bull rings to be killed. Gladiators fought to the end. Human life had no value. Women especially, women, children, animals had no value, all nothing. And all of a sudden comes along this mission and says, no, chesed, gemilas chasodim, one of the pillars, respect for the dignity of every human being. As the president of America said the other day, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed, everyone is b'tzelem Elokim. Everyone has the image of the Almighty, is deserving of respect, of equality, of decency, equal rights under the law, etc., etc., etc. And so, Alexander the Great was introduced to a brand new value. Of course, he heard it, he liked it, he was nice to the Jews, he didn't subscribe to it. He still remained Alexander the Great, and after that continued to take over the world and spread the spirit of Hellenism, the spirit of Greco-Syrian culture, as it was called, which took over the world of Aristotle, etc., which was regarded as the end thing. All right, and therefore, Shimon HaTzadik, going through all this, and as he took leave of the Jewish people, you can imagine they came to him before his death, and because he told them when he expected to die, and they turned around, they said to Shimon HaTzadik, so tell us, how are we going to survive in the future? How will we survive in the future? And Shimon HaTzadik said these same words, the words that he said in the Mishnah. He said, Torah, Aveda, gemilas chasodim, that's your key. With that, you have survival. Just as Hashem, when the Jews saw that in Egypt, the Egyptians were about to charge them, and they though they did, Hashem said, Atem tachrishun, you keep quiet. Hashem yilachem lechem. God will fight your battle. God will fight your battle always, as long as you have on your side Torah, Aveda, Gemilus Chasodim. Now I want to take it from there, you see, and let me discuss something with you for a moment or two. Hold on, sorry. Here it is. Okay. You know, I've been thinking, and you've been thinking, everyone's been thinking. We're living in a time, a very specific time, when Hashem is making huge pronouncements. Huge pronouncements. What the world is going through now, but we don't know if it ever happened before to the whole world. Yes, there have been epidemics, big ones, huge ones, Spanish flu, etc. Every 100 years or so, there are epidemics. And there were big ones too, no doubt. It lasted a long time, took years and decades to recover from, right? But we don't know if there's ever anything like this, where the whole world is affected. Every country in the world is affected. Well, as far as shuls are concerned, well, you know, there are so many Jews go to shul every single day. And all of a sudden, there's no place to go to. They miss it. They're missing friends. They're missing the company of a fellow Jew. They're missing a chance to daven. They're missing it all. And it behooves us to understand, what is Hashem saying? Is he saying anything? Is he making a statement? Answer has to be yes, because this comes from Hashem. There's a prayer that the Gedolim have written, which we try to say every time we say the Amidah, in which we say, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shleima. I believe with perfect faith. There's no such thing as an accident. There's no such thing as a coincidence. And whatever is happening from Hashem and with His permission. And therefore, we turn to Hashem. That's the prayer. We turn to Hashem. Ani ponecha elecha. I turn to Hashem and pray to you that tatzil otonu. Please save us. V'chazecha. With your loving kindness, please save us from this plague, from this terrible coronavirus plague. Save us, save us, save us. So it's Hashem. We're not blaming anybody else. We're not blaming the Chinese. Whatever it is. It's between us and God. So he's making a statement, a huge statement, unheard of statement, not spelled out. It's not spelled out, so we don't know where to go. Where do we go? How do we interpret this? And we learned this thing about Shimon HaTzadik, and then I thought that was the end of the subject for us. Then I opened the sefer over here of our good friend, Rabbi Professor Avot Tversky, that beautiful human being who's written perhaps 50 or 60 books, the expert on substance abuse, who built one of the biggest hospitals in America to fight alcohol and substance abuse, and he has his commentary on Pirkei. And then I read his, which followed in the gist that we were just saying before. And when I read the words of Avram Tversky, suddenly I thought, hang on, he's talking to us. We're on a similar track. I think he's trying to answer our question. He wrote this book was probably the first time 25, 30 years ago. But as he said, in every generation, the answer has to be found. Hashem is always talking, not always as harsh as now, not affecting the whole world at such a dramatic scale, including terrible loss of life. Loss of life the economic upheaval. The world turned upside down, inside out, and we don't know how long it will take to come right. Millions of people without jobs, millions of people struggling, institutions of learning of all kinds struggling throughout the world just for survival. And Hashem's talking. He's making a big speech. So I was looking at the words of Rabbi Avot Tversky, because he's not so well, and he gives a historic context. And this is what he says. Shimon HaTzadik was a contemporary of Alexander the Great. We know that. We know that ourselves. He lived in a time when Greek philosophy was flourishing, with the budding of science and the revolutionary concepts of Aristotle. That's where he belonged. That's where he came from. The might of Alexander, the wisdom of Aristotle, appeared to be an invincible combination which would transform the civilized world. And no doubt it did. No doubt it did. Some 2,000 years later, says Rabbi Tversky, now we look back, 2,000 years later, look back at the world of Aristotle, the world of Alexander, the Greek glory is, and what do we find now, he says? We find the remains of the Acropolis. That's all you got. The remains of the Acropolis in Athens testify to the glory of Greece that is no longer, that was once, but isn't around today. Aristotelian science has long ago been refuted and replaced. However, the Torah of the Antiknesset Agdola, the Torah of the member of the Great Assembly, is still alive. It's still here. Torah, Avot, it's still around. It's still around. Is outlasted that. Is around while the other is a heap of rubble in the city of Athens. Right. These values of Shimon HaTzadik, he says, are still here today and will be with us until eternity, to the end of time. Right. Now, and says Rabbi Tversky, every generation has to face this on its own. It means different things in different times. And then he says what he thinks it means in our time, which is our time which is now. He says, what is the message? And the message he says is this. He says, civilization needs certain values to exist. And in the absence of those values, it'll fall apart. By the way, how does God destroy the world? Well, he's doing a great job now. He's doing a great job now. We hope he won't finish the job. But without something called a virus, or something you need a microscope to see. You can hardly touch it. Turn the whole world upside down, inside out. No place in the world untouched. No people untouched. No one's life is tranquil and calm because we don't know. We really don't know what this is all about. And something inside of us that tells us, let's hope so. Hope so. It's a great word. Hope so. Anyhow, says Rabbi Tversky, hardly a week goes by, and this is what he wrote 20, 30 years ago, a week goes by when we're not made aware of the fact the actual survival of the world is in jeopardy. Right? Is in jeopardy. I was about to say something else, but let me read what he says. Our technological advances have given us many blessings and made life more comfortable in many ways. Unfortunately, this has come at the cost, a terrible cost. What's the cost? Chemical pollution of our rivers and lakes, seepage of nuclear waste into our drinking water, acid rain, greenhouse effect of carbon dioxide emissions, tampering with the ozone layer. The eventual increase in global warming may result in hurricanes, tornadoes, and flooding. There's a destruction of tropical forests, resulting in elimination of various species of animals. There may be other evils which we have not yet discovered, and various efforts are made to control the progressive ruin they've only made with limited success. The reason? What's the reason? Why is all this happening? You know why I listen to these words? You know why? People have an insatiable appetite, wealth, leisure, and greater convenience. They have an insatiable appetite for give it to me now and immediately, and I want all of it. In other words, insatiable appetite, wealth, leisure, and convenience. We will not transmit the same world to our kids than we got, because it's a different value system. This is our value system, and this value system that we have over here, is going to destroy us. He says, he says, in his experience, and that's where his experience is. He says, to a drug addict who knows he's in trouble. He knows he's in trouble and on heroin and cocaine and etc. The knowledge that the drug may destroy him doesn't mean anything. He carries on anyhow. His desire to fulfill some immediate need is so strong that he doesn't worry about the results. And in the same way, mankind carries on. As the individual drug addict is aware that it might destroy him, and it doesn't stop him. But why? Because it's hedonism, it's self-worship, it's trying to the personal pleasure, etc., etc. Right? So, in other words, to follow this line, which he does, of course, if you follow this line over here, at the end of the day, this line leads to destruction and destruction of the world. He says. But there's an antidote. There's an antidote. First of all, let me add one word. This concept of destruction of the world. What does Hashem have to do? Perhaps he's doing it already. Perhaps perhaps the virus is good enough. But every day in our davening, at chakras, in the bracha before Shema, we say as follows. We praise God, we say, God renews creation. Creation which he did 5,780 years ago, he does it again every day. Every day God creates the world anew. Every single day God recreates the world. And the prayer gives us a posting. How do we know that? What does it say? It says, God, what's the word? Osei, makes, present tense, the great light, because his favor is great. In other words, God is busy recreating the world every day. And if he wouldn't recreate every day, that's it. No atomic bombs, not even hurricanes. All you have to do is stop recreating and it's all over. Now, why is that? Why does God have to recreate every day? So Chaim of Loshen said this hundreds of years ago. Because we believe that the creation of the world is yesh me'ayin, creatio ex nihilo. God made a world out of nothing. That's unknown in the world of science. There's no such thing as out of nothing. If you burn something, it becomes a gas. There's no such thing as nothing. But we believe Hashem created the world out of nothing. And the world created out of nothing needs the hand of its creator continuously. In other words, the carpenter gets a few pieces of wood, puts them together one way or another, you got a table. Now the carpenter can walk away. His job is over. This table will stand. Why? Because it's done. The job is done. But if the carpenter would have had to make it out of nothing, and it needed his hands to keep it going, we don't know what would happen then. But she said, when it comes to the world, Hashem has to recreate it continuously, and if we stop doing it, and so Rabbi say, we're always in the hands of Hashem. And what are we being told? That in this difficult world, which is, and why does it come about? Because of hedonism, pleasure seeking. We're all pleasure seekers. We all like the good time. But when it gets in the way and takes over all of mankind, that's it. There's no future. There's no future, and therefore you have all the violence in America today. It's all part of the epidemic. It's all a reaction. Of course, there's inequality, and there shouldn't be, etc., etc. But there's a wildness because man is facing something he can't face. He doesn't know how to face. To this shiur something is dressing himself. That's what the mission is saying. Allah Torah, Allah there's a way. Creates harmony, creates goodwill, creates fellowship, makes people love each other, care about each other, creates a better world. And And I saw the other day, there was a famous Gaon who lived in America, in Europe, chief rabbi of Antwerp, Belgium, after the war, Rav Kreisberg. There was a Gaon, was really a genius of Torah and a tzaddik. And at the end of his life, he was stricken with a terrible illness, which eventually brought about his end. And he went to Rav Kanievsky, the disciple in Bnei Brak. That was his generation older than he was, and he said, "What can he do? What can he do to try to live a little longer? He wanted to live, which is natural to want to live." And the disciple said to him, "You know what? Take your last strength that you have and try to marry off orphans, marry off your son." And guess what? He lived for more years. He did that. And what is that? That's what Shimon HaTzadik said. There's a way of keeping it going. There's a way to avoid it all. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. We'll finish this mission next year, please God.
Next week. Very good. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Wow.
Okay, guys.
Shkach, Rabbi, it was magic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It was
Let-
great.
let go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. They go over the time. Thank you.
Never over the time. Never